you to just kind of take a few minutes to summarise what each of your groups came up with, sort of as central themes, some of the big ideas. As we go through each group presenting, it may end up that you don't have a lot to add, but I think it would still be good to say, you know, we had these ones and these ones that were the same as others, and then anything else that you might want to add. So perhaps we can just start from group one and work our way through. So Lizzie, was that you that facilitated that group?
Tina.
Tina.
Kia ora. Our group, I think we covered a lot of the basic core transferable skills, like digital literacy, health and safety, wellness, that kind of thing. We also talked about how the idea of highly transferable skills or qualifications in general is a good concept, yet having a qualification that recognises your specialty is also very attractive. You know, so there's a something to consider there. What else did we discuss? I think those are the key things, really.
Anyone else from that group want to add anything? So room 2.
It's me. Our group, we mainly focused on the core transferable skills, because level 2 is sort of where our group was sitting. So some of the things that we discussed were things like having a step before the core transferable skills. So that would address things like literacy and numeracy, you know, all of that life skill stuff that happens that should be, they should have before they go on to the qualification. Having the right people enrolled, so making sure that they have those basic skills first, so we're not setting them up to fail. We talked about introducing the technology that they would need to be able to complete the qualifications as well, and the skills. So things like teaching them about different apps that they could use on their phones, all of that sort of thing. We also talked about finding out from the employers what they would expect an entry-level learner to come out with. There seems to be a wee bit of a mismatch at times with what the employers are expecting and what's actually the learners, what they're coming out with. The New Zealand Certificate of Foundation Skills, which has already been developed, ticks off quite a lot of the core transferable skills, and maybe tapping into that one as well, because it sort of works quite well with this. We talked about maths and literacy and financial literacy as a life skill, and that should also be incorporated into it somehow. The same with nutrition, fitness and sleep. Often learners going into primary industries, they don't understand the rural isolation aspect of things. They don't understand the reality of the industry. So teaching them things like building resilience, problem solving, being solution focused, and work ethic is also important. And also, you know, there's seems to be a different perception of the generations. So we've got the young people coming through, but you know, they might be going to work on a farm where the farmer's an older generation and they don't understand the younger generations, and there's a bit of a mismatch with what's happening with that as well. So that's some of the key things that we talked about.
Yeah. Sorry, that keeps shooting up. Thanks, Lisa. Anyone from group room 2 that has anything to add? It's pretty good coverage, Lisa. So our room was next. Nikki, I might pick on you. Is that okay? I could pop up on the, but I think you'll have a really good perspective, given as you were someone who is integral in developing this framework.
I thought it was a very thoughtful conversation. We basically went through and used some quite concrete examples like health and safety to think about what the components in each of the core transferable skills were that contributed to being able to develop good health and safety. Lots of conversations similar to the things that have already been mentioned, that importance of communication, not just cross-cultural communication, but also cross-generational communication, and how can we support people, both employees and employers, to be able to have those conversations. I think a key thing I took from it was the importance of the core transferable skills being taught, or whatever it may be, passed on in the context of food and fibre. And I think that was quite a clear message to me, that these things don't sit in isolation. If we can develop those skills within the context of what's happening in the workplace, they'll be more meaningful for whoever's learning it, and probably stick better than if they are taken out of context. And I think financial literacy is probably quite a good example for that, you know, filling in forms, all those kind of things, but in the context of what you're going to be expected to do when you're in the workplace. Also quite a bit of discussion around how this would look different for somebody who's transitioning through from the school system to somebody who's coming in as an industry changer, and how can the whatever's developed in terms of the qualification reflect that people who are industry changers will come in with many of these skills already, and what's sort of a quick fire way to bring them up to speed to what those skills look like in the food and fibre sector. That's all that's on the top of my mind. Pip?
Does anyone else from the group want to add anything? You know, we had some pretty great conversations in there. Trudy's from Mahata. Did you have anything that you wanted to sort of share from that teachers, you know, secondary school teachers' perspective? If you're still there, Trudy, may not be. No, gone. I think in that, you know, it's been raised in some of our other wānanga, and it's something that we probably need to think about when we're developing these products. And I know Richard is also in this space, but it's becoming more and more evident that in schools where programs are being delivered that offer the primary industry skills qualification as part of going towards NCEA, etc., that actually those students really don't give a rat's about NCEA. They just want to be doing something practical and getting themselves ready for work, and which is great and all good. The issue is that there are becoming less and less teachers available to do that, that the training for teachers to deliver this in schools is minimal, if not zero. And that as these teachers disappear from schools, the opportunities to do this with school students, high school students, is at real risk of disappearing along with that. And so I guess the challenge for us is to think about how we can still support learners in schools to transition into employment through the products that we develop, or through other mechanisms and things like apps that can record their work experience and things like that. So I think that's just something for us all to be really aware of and mindful of. And as much as I would love to wave a magic wand and create 50 more ag teachers for our schools across the country, you know, I'm not sure that that's going to happen. And it is, again, you know, an aging workforce. So there are less and less people staying in the role, and there's no one to replace them when we go. So that's been raised at all of our other wānanga, and it came up in our group again. So just wanted to share that with everyone. Room 4. So I think that was Jasmine and Mel, you were running that group, is that right?
Mel, you take it away.
You're on mute, Mel.
Tim Tavis,
All right.
please.
There we go. I was going to throw Gerwin into it, but no, that's okay. I think we have similar findings to the other teams as well. So it kind of kicked off with, and we really concentrated on the core technical skills. But we really focused on, I think a lot of what we focused on was on self, like self-awareness, respect, encouragement, integrity, a bit in the listening and communicating in terms of the participation space, certainly problem solving, and problem solving and goal setting. But we got it even a bit deeper, I think, and understanding how we can develop confident learners, and getting them to know and understand their own capabilities. And recognizing where they fall short, and building that mana for them to be able to fill that gap and not just listen to someone else filling that gap. So I think that's, if I've left anything out, team, Nigel, Rosa, please, sorry, Gerwin, please let me know. And Donica, sorry. Yeah, please. We're good? Okay. Cheers.
Right, room 5. Is that you, Lizzie?
That is me. I'm very sorry. My computer and my cameras are on the blink for some reason. So I will just speak to you as from the void. So we had a lot of the similar comments as one would expect around sort of core transferable skills. Our team was really interesting because we talked a lot about kind of the way that the provision environment affects the way that skills are taught, or the way that you have to go about approaching some skills. And that was really interesting, just like looking at the skill, but also then how you have to kind of inflect that slightly differently if, for example, you're teaching on a marae. And a lot of our provision from one of our participants was conducted on marae. We talked, one of the things that I don't think necessarily has come up, but which Mel sort of was touching on there with confidence, is self-respect and protecting yourself and knowing what it's okay to say no to, and building that in really early so that people have that kind of self-protection and their learners have their self-protection in there around what is and is not okay. And that kind of links in with, we had quite a focus on health and safety, and the responsibility to look after yourself and also to look after others, and how that transforms across the different group sort of levels, but also that, you know, health and safety and that kind of care for other people can become its own passion, and it can become its own pathway for some people, and how we might be able to build that into the products that we're developing and make that a bit more of an option across our industries, rather than being that kind of that thing that, you know, is a bit punitive and everyone has to do because it's in the legislation. So it was a great conversation, and I'm very grateful to my participants for having that conversation with me.
Thanks, Lizzie. Anyone from the group want to add anything?
One has had to leave and the other one was having trouble with her mic, so the poor thing had to type everything into the chat.
Oh, no. It's okay.
So,
We got a round of applause from Michelle, so that'll do.
all right, okay.
Sid, were you in room 6?
Hi. Kia ora
Hi.
tātou. As many of the groups have mentioned, I'll probably just build on what's been discussed in the core transferable skills. I heard confidence, which was, you know, coming out of knowing self, and communication skills, which we also talked about as being vital within those. I liked one of the suggestions, and sorry for naming, Laura, who uses within their learners personality tests to understand their strengths and weaknesses, so that they have a stronger understanding of themselves, but also, you know, how they'll have an idea of how they're going to be able to work in team dynamics in other groups. So that was a nice sort of way of, I suppose, getting them to unpack themselves in that space. We also talked about learning to learn. You know, one of the things that brought up was the motivation to want to learn and continue to progress throughout your career, and that moved into leadership roles and management. So we unpacked a little bit, which were quite similar in some aspects of what you guys were talking about. If we move down to the core technical skills, some of the things that was brought up was, and you'll probably be able to talk a little bit better on it, Clive, is the social licensing, understanding of business operations and the context. So that could fall under, you know, the legislative and regulatory knowledge. There was also talk, I heard mention of digital literacy skills. So again, you know, having that understanding of how to use it, but also having an understanding of the security risks that it brings to it as well. So those are some of the things, such as, and as well as data sovereignty. So quite a few things that were unpacked there. And I suppose the last part was the specialized technical skills. They were talking about obviously honing in on the practical skills for the learners to have the experience to complete the job and the role. Yeah, we could probably go a little bit more into it, but I'll let the other groups share. Was that pretty much it, team? Feel free to jump in there if you like.
Yeah, you did a good job with that, Sid. I would say that another thing that sort of cropped up was a discussion really around this sort of move towards lots more micro credentials around skills, but we recognise that actually there's still a real value around a qualification being developed over time. And so, and again, you know, kudos to the work that Laura's doing in Southland, where they have learners for a 12-month period. There's stuff that is done which is to identify the individual needs of learners and then to package material around that. So I think there's a risk if we atomize qualifications too far, but there's also an opportunity by being able to bring in things like logistics or hospitality and other types of areas outside of traditional agricultural qualifications that meet the needs of individual learners, because it's the learner has to be motivated to succeed. It's the learner's attitudes that will get them their job. But those core skills are actually very difficult to judge and often are very values laden and subject to bias, and often not valued by the learner until much later in their career. So I think there's a wide range of discussions around that.
Yeah. Back to you, Clive.
Oh, kia ora. Thanks, Clive. That was awesome. And Liam, you were in room 7, is that right?
Kia ora. Kia ora anō. So you guys have covered a fair chunk of what we talked about. We had a good kōrero about the lack of representation of well-being throughout the different levels and what that looked like. We talked a lot about embedding culture in our workplace and that some of the reasons for moving on from farms or industry is that kind of the culture that someone brings in doesn't align with the culture of the workplace. So making sure that we've got team building, teamwork and culture building as part of that framework. We talked about cultural competency as well. So not just the culture of the farm, but the culture of the people that make up the working force. Talked about the importance of community involvement. Talked about learning styles, not just knowing what your learning style is, but knowing the learning style of others and how that can help with interactions. We talked about a little bit of kind of some key technical stuff, which doesn't always relate, but we talked about biosecurity, ethics, animal welfare, health and safety, thinking about anything else we talked about, looking at my notes, talked about the need for understanding that, from an agriculture point of view, we are in a food production industry and how the behaviour we have on the farm in terms of our environment has an impact on our branding. So how that kind of, knowing what our chain is from farm to table and how the way that we farm can have an impact on not just the farm, but as our branding. We talked about the different levels. We talked about level 3 being the why. So not just doing a job, but understanding what's behind the job. And I think I've got everything. And if anyone from my wonderful group has anything to add to that.
Liam,
No?
just to add to that.
Thanks, April.
Sorry. Just a little bit about avoiding box ticking exercises when we've got people who are coming in as adult learners, not necessarily just school leavers, and how do we address things that are important to a qualification from a school leaver that can be carried through without over assessing into adult learners.
This one, yep. So that kind of RPL, but making sure that they had an understanding of core skills without being over-assessed on it. Yep, cool. Kia ora.
So what was the solution, April? Did you?
we didn't get that far.
Okay.
We raised it as good chat.
Yep. No,
yeah, I think one of the things we did talk about, Pip, was if there's some non-negotiable skills that every learner should have, that they don't have to repeat a whole qual to get those core skills, that there's kind of bites of learning that are available to them, and kind of getting the recognition of the skills rather than the level. Like trying to say to a 30-year-old entry-level person, you need to do level 2 stuff. Well, I've got a degree. Well, this is a core skill that you need to have coming through. So it's a little bit about changing the culture of or the importance of training and skills rather than the levels.
And I think being aware of what the outcome is required. So for example, in the wellness one, if you're trying to get someone to do a meal plan for 7 days, that's a great thing for a 17, 18, 19, 20-year-old to do. But a person who's married with 3 children and is in a family environment and can prove that they can feed their children probably don't need to complete that 7-day plan. However, demonstrate they have an understanding of what a healthy living is. So yeah.
Nice. Oh, well, I really enjoyed that actually. That was really good hearing what had happened in the other groups and the differences too. That was awesome. Liam, do you want to take us through kind of next steps after, so this is the last of our wānanga?
Yep. I think when Pip introduced our advisory groups earlier, that's kind of where our next steps are looking. So we're going to be collating information from all the wānanga. We've got people that have volunteered for different groups, but we've always got room for more. So I've managed to call up one of the people from my group, possibly two, who have been voluntold or asked nicely and said, yep, that would be cool. So if you have capacity and you would like to continue to support what we're doing from a qualifications advisory group perspective, where you'd like to have some input into the GPOs, the graduate profile outcomes, so the skills that our learners will be able to demonstrate at the end of the qualification, then please get hold of us, or we'll put our emails in the chat. If you are an SME or if you're from industry and you've got some really specific knowledge at the different levels, you feel that you can contribute to some of the kind of nuts and bolts, line by line writing of skills, then we'd love you to be part of our technical advisory groups. And if you are a provider or have provision or do some teaching on your farms or like cadet farms and stuff, then we'd love to have your support on our provider advisory groups.
We're also, as I said earlier, really keen to come and visit people out in your workplaces, in your colleges, on your farms, on your marae, wherever that may be. We are really happy to come and support you and talk to you and help develop products that will enable you to keep doing your great work, but perhaps even better. That would be awesome. I think that's about us. Any sort of final thoughts or feedback, Liam?
I was just going to say, if while you guys have got us as a captive audience, do you guys have any questions or queries? I know we didn't really talk so much about qualifications and levels of learning, rather we talked about skills. So we've got some time up our sleeves if you guys have got any questions that you want to ask, any kind of closing comments or observations, anything at all.
Deafening silence.
Oh, the teacher in me is kind of counting on my fingers, give them time to think. So.
I guess just I'd like to say on behalf of all of the industry, thank you very much for engaging with us and actually putting in a lot of thought to future-proof these qualifications and make them more fit for purpose and simplified. We've all been doing our best to deliver what we can to our entry-level people who are both coming in from school, from university and transitioning. And I think this body of work is going to be really, really valuable. And we all can appreciate the complexities of it. Our industry is diverse, it's huge. Our learners are just as diverse and come from a wide range of backgrounds. So this is not a simple task, and we really appreciate the time you're doing to put into it.
Kia ora. Thank you, Laura. Clive.
Yeah, I would echo what Laura's been saying. Having spent quite a lot of time in trying to support food and fibre type of qualifications in metropolitan areas and witnessing the closure of most of that because it's very difficult to excite someone in Ottawa to do an existing food and fibre qualification. Yet, if you explore with them what interests them, they are really interested in the food and fibre world and its contribution to doing good in the world. And so I suppose it's a plea as you go through this is to think through how to be able to provide food and fibre qualifications that work within large metropolitan areas rather than work to support the employers in the rural economies primarily. Ultimately, if you've got people who get excited around the role of food and fibre wherever it might be and might be interested in food security, food justice, all sorts of issues, they then will explore how they might be able to develop that further and move that. But your largest populations are not located where your largest typical rural industry employers are. And the qualifications that have been developed in the past and the qualifications and the thought processes that are going on now are not designed to really meet the needs of young people growing up in metropolitan areas. So that's just a comment.
Kia ora, Clive. Very valid comment. Anyone else? Well, it is my great hope that we will all see you all again at somewhere in the journey in the next 6 to 12 months or however long that this is going to take us. But yeah, as I say, you're welcome to drop in and out of the project when you are able to. If you want to come on the whole journey with us, that would be magnificent. But again, any time, thoughts, energy you can put into it will be greatly appreciated by all of us. So it looks like we might even be able to give you about 10 minutes back in your day, which will be very nice. And I think we've lost James along the way, but we traditionally close all of our hui also with a karakia to sort of clear the way and allow you to go back to your business with clear space and leave this behind. Take the bits of it that you want to take with you, but leave it behind and move into your next space. I might ask Adrian, would you mind closing us off with the karakia, please?
Sure, kia ora tātou. Me noi tātou, ka whakairia te tapu, kia wātea ai te ara, kia tūruki whakataha ai, kia tūruki whakataha ai. Haumie, hui e, tai ki.
Thank you.